He's Brady Quinn, Fox college football analyst, Big Noon Kickoff, former Notre Dame quarterback, and the show that precedes ours on Fox Sports Radio, and the host of Two Pros and a Cup of Joe. Let's start at the end of the game. Would you have called pass interference in that situation? Was it pass interference?
I personally would not call it. Could you make a case on pretty much any other play throughout the course of the game? Would that be deemed pass interference? Yes, probably more likely than not. There was some pushing going both ways. And in that final play, I think we all know when those plays looked at kind of as a Hail Mary situation, even though it wasn't your traditional Hail Mary, you're not going to get that call. I mean, I think I'm the only player who was a part of a Browns team in 2009 when we lost to the Detroit Lions to ever basically have a defensive pass interference called, which was called on Calvin Johnson in that game. And we obviously ended up losing that game. But I can't think of another example of it in pro football or even college football for that matter.
How did Miami win?
At the line of scrimmage. That's really what they've done. And I think last night's game was highlighted by the offensive line. I mean, that's just a massive group. And it's hard to like really understand, Dan, like how big they are until you're at the field level, because the camera doesn't do it justice. It really doesn't. And it's why, like, and I've said this, and we'll get into the semifinal game tonight, hopefully, but every time I see Indiana's offensive line and defensive line, and then you look across, whether it was the Big Ten championship for Ohio State or even Alabama most recently, you just go, there's a tremendous size advantage. Well, that's definitely going to be the case if IU makes it and wins tonight. They're just a massive group. They're physical. I mean, Mario Cristobal really kind of made, staked his claim as a coach in college football on the offensive line. And that group, I thought, won last night. In prior games, it felt like it was Ruben Bain, Akeem Messador on the edges for their defense. But that's what they've won with. I mean, and don't get me wrong, they're extremely talented too in other spots. But that team is led in the trenches, and that's a reflection of who their head coach is. And credit to Mario Cristobal for getting that team to play that sort of physical style of football throughout the playoffs and for the most part throughout the year.
I know we spent a lot of time talking about quarterbacks in the portal, and I keep reminding people, give me offensive and defensive linemen. I mean, I'll take them. I mean, Georgia won national titles because they basically said, it doesn't matter who we have at quarterback, but it matters who we have offensive, defensive linemen.
Yeah, look at what Philly did after they won those national titles. Howie Roseman said, I'm going to draft those guys and we're going to win a Super Bowl with those guys. So not only did they win national championships, they won Super Bowls with that strategy. Yeah. So that to me, I think is that's what's not talked about enough for if you really dive into what's happening in the transfer portal now. Everyone's talking about the quarterbacks, and they're obviously going to fetch the highest price if you don't have one. But it's still offensive linemen, it's defensive linemen. We can go on for days talking about how the style of football that's taught at younger levels and how that translates up and how it impacts offensive line play, and how hard it is to find guys who are ready coming out of high school, who either don't need to put on a bunch of weight and put on a bunch of muscle and develop that sort of strength and physicality. That's one part of it, but also just the way they're taught, the technique and everything else that goes along with that. It's very different. It's just a lot of that's changed over time. So they're a prized commodity. You don't have to look any further than Texas Tech, who won the Big 12, and look at that defensive front and the impact that it made on their chances of getting to the playoff and then ultimately winning in the playoff. But at the end of the day, that's what this game's going to come down to: who's best in the trenches in tonight's semifinal and obviously the national championship.
If I had Lane Kiffin hooked up to a lie detector test, who do you think he was rooting for last night?
I'd like to think from knowing.
We keep saying we'd like to think that. What do you actually think?
Well, he's incentivized to root for Ole Miss, right? Like, he's still getting paid off these wins. So I think he was rooting for Ole Miss.
He's rich already.
I get that. Hold on. Anyone who has money, you can't tell me they don't want more money.
Okay.
That's that excuse. I hate when people bring that up. Like, oh, they've got money. Oh, I guess they just don't care then. They're going to light it on fire and they don't care what happens to it. I think he was rooting for Ole Miss. And in part because, I mean, it's going to look bad if obviously they went up winning a national championship. Yeah. And that's maybe part of the reason why you left. Ole Miss in the first place, but he is incentivized. I think the dude's got a good heart, despite some of the other things that maybe go on. So I'd like to think that he's rooting for guys too who are going to be coaching on his staff. Charlie Weiss Jr., who'll
I
be
agree
joining
with
them.
that. Yeah, I agree with that.
So, and even some of the players who may be joining him at some point. So I'm sure there's some elements.
No,
to
he
that
would
where
be
was
rooting
for
against
them.
his players if they're going to join him because now they can join him a week earlier.
True, but I think they would still have that chance after this game to figure that out. But I'd like to think he was rooting for Ole Miss. I believe he was.
How do you evaluate Carson Beck?
Ooh. I think you obviously saw in the final drive what he's capable of. I think we've seen throughout portions of his career what he's capable of. The tough thing is you really have to do a deep dive into, who he is as a person, what maybe has or hasn't been there for him so he can display that consistency like we saw maybe you'd say a couple of years ago at Georgia, or even at points in time this season when he has those good games, he's not able to follow it up and consistently play that way. It felt like he was managing the game in the quarterfinal round. And then in last night, like when they really needed him to, he stepped up, made big time throws, obviously the scramble for the touchdown to win. But I think you see the high end, like he can be a guy that's talked about going in the first round because of that arm talent and the ability to layer throws and anticipate and see windows. But there's other times too when you see some of those poor decisions or him not playing as well versus pressure or some of those blitz looks, you go, well, he's going to be asked to do that at the next level. So it's hard because you can see the upside there, but there's still a level of consistency that's just not. It's never really come together. And I don't know how to put that, how to summarize that at this time, because I still think he's got a big game ahead of him. If he plays well in the national championship, based on what he did in last night's game, based on what he did in the national championship, that's probably all people are really want to talk about when they were coming to a draft evaluation of him.
Talking to Brady Quinn, Fox College football analyst. What did Oregon, gain or learn from the first matchup with Indiana that helps them tonight?
They got to be better in stopping the run. I thought that was what ultimately lost them the game was in their house. And this is a group that obviously is highly motivated. You see Dan Lanning's pregame speeches, but they weren't the more physical team. And I think they know they have to be the more physical team because Indiana has proven that every single game. We can talk about Fernando Mendoza. We can talk about the defense, Cooper, Surratt, some of their playmakers. It starts in the trenches. Like they have dictated to others how that game is going to go. And everything to me is based off how they run the football and the RPOs and everything else off of that. So they've got to find a way of stopping the run. That's been a little bit of an Achilles heel for Oregon's defense this year, if we want to break it down. But I tend to believe that, when you have rematches, and it's seldom you have it in college football, at least not until we had the expanded playoff, that, the team that loses is going to learn more from that. And I think you have evidence of that. Look at the playoff. If you look at every single Power 4 team that played a rematch, the team that lost the initial matchup won. You don't have to look any further than it was Ole Miss. Obviously, lost to Georgia. They beat Georgia in the subsequent round. You had Bama, who lost to Oklahoma, who beat Oklahoma, and even in the SEC championship game, Georgia lost to Bama. They were able to win the SEC championship. So there's examples, I think, of that. I think the only one you could point to is Ole Miss, who beat Tulane, obviously a rematch, which didn't change anything. But again, not really in the same level playing field. I think that's what's at stake for Oregon is this team, to me, Dan, feels like Ohio State last year, where, Ohio State had kind of, lost the Michigan game, stumbled versus Oregon as well, but they kind of built that momentum as they went on to win a national championship. Oregon, lost that Indiana game, didn't play in the conference championship, but I feel like they've kind of learned from that and they've built up from that. And now they've got a lot of momentum as they head into it. So I would not be surprised at all if you see a very more, physical, different style Oregon team, and as far as how aggressive they are stopping Indiana's rushing attack.
The SEC finishes this postseason with a 1-8 record against non-conference Power 4 teams. Is this the future, or is this an aberration?
No, this is what college football has been. We for the third straight year don't have an SEC team playing for a national championship. For the third straight year, you didn't have the bulk share of representation in the playoff, at least in the semis. They're not represented by SEC teams. So I think when you really take a good hard look at what's happened in college football, is there's been a shift. And look, you can draw your own conclusion about how NIL and the transfer portal has impacted that, where now you can pay players that it's above board. I'll let someone else, tick off the SEC fan base about it. And I'm also not naive enough to think that other schools and other conferences weren't doing it. But it just kind of it feels like an odd cause and effect that NIL transfer portal, that combination now becomes possible, and all of a sudden the teams in the Big Ten and other teams start kind of really capitalizing off of that. So I think this is going to be more of the norm, and I think moving forward, you're only going to see teams within the Big Ten continue to get stronger. I mean, if IU does it, that's no saying like who else could potentially do it too in the Big Ten that we really didn't think about 3 years ago.
No matter who wins the national title, do you feel Notre Dame is still better than them?
Hey, I don't like living in a world of hypotheticals. So I'm not one of those Notre Dame fans who's going to sit there and say that.
Okay.
I wish there was a scenario where Notre Dame could have been in, so we could have seen what it would look like. But that wasn't the case. So I even hate the fact that we have to talk about it, because it takes away from all the other schools and what they've accomplished, all the players, what they've accomplished. But
I'm just trying to make great radio here.
I get it, but here's what I'll say. With you even asking it, it goes to show you the brand power of Notre Dame. Like, ESPN can't help themselves, and they have to make a snarky comment as they do the post-game highlights on SportsCenter afterwards about Notre Dame, who hasn't been involved for a month. But like, everyone still wants to talk about him. Okay, like, go ahead, keep on talking about the brand that everyone hates to admit is the top of college football, even though they're not a part of it.
Well, same thing with the Cowboys. Everybody goes out of their way to somehow incorporate the Cowboys in, even now. We're going to look ahead to next year with the Cowboys. Wait a minute, there's games coming up this weekend. Can you give me a comp for Fernando Mendoza?
Kirk Cousins is kind of who when I'm watching his tape and see in regards to his throwing motion.
A higher end?
That's a tough question to answer, because
he was a 4th-round draft pick. That's why I was saying that this is going to be the number one. Now, granted, there's not a lot of quarterbacks in this draft.
Well, hold on. I mean, if Dante Moore comes out, I'm not so sure he's not going to be the number 1 overall pick. Like, I think there's a real argument to be made in his upside, his skill set. To me, if he came out, would be the purest passer. Meaning, when you watch him, I think he's got a stronger arm. I think he layers throws better. I know he's not as experienced. And obviously, he's not the Heisman Trophy winner. And Fernando's had a tremendous year. I'm not taking anything away from that.
Yeah, but let's take away the college stuff. Let's look at pro potential.
Right. So when I watch the tape of these guys and you're watching the different throws that they're making, I sit there and look at Dante Moore. I said, yeah, that's the guy I probably feel like has the higher upside. And even some of the stuff he does off schedule.
Okay, but let me make you Tom Brady. You're the GM of the Raiders. You're on the clock. And the pick is in. The Raiders select.
Again, Dante Moore hasn't declared. So until he does, I would be Fernando Mendoza. Once he does, I would lean right now, based on my film study on both, probably on Dante Moore.
I like that.
And I know that's going to be controversial on people, but it's just what I've seen from him. I've sat down, talked to them, and they're both tremendous guys. Like, I think they both can be franchise quarterbacks. Like we've gotten in trouble before because we had a debate over like Bryce Young, CJ Stroud. And it's like, both these guys can be franchise quarterbacks. Like, they each have a skill set that I think translates. To me, it's more about, okay, if Fernando goes to Las Vegas or if Dante goes to Las Vegas, what are they going to do to help him out? Because that is a team that's devoid of protection, devoid of any playmakers helping him out. I mean, look at Ashton Genty. I think he rushed for, 1,200 yards, 1,300 yards? Like 1,000 of them were after contact. I mean, it's ridiculous what he had to endure as a running back. So both those guys, I think, will probably go 1 and 2 in whatever order the teams see that. But I think the difference for me, again, is just, I think Dante's got a little bigger arm. I think he can create a little bit more. He's less experienced and obviously doesn't have the same type of tape, but it's just effortless, man. When you watch him, the way he throws the football. And the one concern I have a little bit for Fernando is they run a bit more of a heavier RPO offense. And so that doesn't translate quite as well to the next level. We always talk about the progression of quarterbacks reading defenses and understanding what they're trying to take away. I think you see a little more NFL throws, more of an NFL style offense from what Dante's asked to do at Oregon, as opposed to maybe what you're seeing from Fernando at IU.
Jets, Raiders, if you had your choice and you're going to play quarterback next year, where are you going?
I think the Jets are better positioned because of their personnel to allow you to have success. I was a part of the Jets organization for half a year, so a cup of coffee or whatever, and I would say that they've got things set up, but you just got to hope that it all comes together.
Would you go back to college if that was the option? You could go Raiders, Jets, or back to Oregon.
If you're talking about if you're talking about the business decision and you're the number one overall pick, you're making a lot of money on that first contract. That's fully guaranteed, really, right? For the first 4 years with a fifth-year option. No one's going to be able to compete with that at the college level. And so you might say, are you willing to take on that risk where, yeah, you could get paid, I don't know, Brendan Sorsby got paid, $5 million reportedly to go to Texas Tech. You're going to get paid good money and you delay it for another year. But I'll ask you this, Dan, Jets, Raiders, the Browns, Titans, they've been drafting somewhere in that spot for a long time. It seems like it's pretty cyclical. It happens every other year. So there's no guarantee if you go back to school, you're not going to have that same team or the same situation play itself out.
Yeah. I'll leave you with this. Does Miami fire their head coach if they don't know who is going to be their next head coach?
It just doesn't line up to think that they didn't react to the John Harbaugh now being out there for them.
Yeah.
None of it lines up. Not with who the general manager interview candidates have been, and especially if they end up hiring their general manager first. I think the thing that bothers me the most about it is, would have Mike McDaniel benched Tua if he knew that he was going to get fired at some point, whether it's after the season or if he felt like he needed to put the best guy out there to win. And it's no disrespect to Quinn Ewers, but he's a rookie. Maybe they want to see what they have in him. But I think as a coach, you also do that if you feel like you're comfortable. Hey, I'm going to be here in 2026.
Yeah.
So let's see what we have in this young guy. Yeah. That's what strikes me as a bit odd too, is just the way it all went about. It feels like, again, they were reactive to who else is out there, maybe even with Stefanski, but it seems like all the dots are connected and it's going to end up being Harbaugh when it's all said and done.
Good to chat with you. As always, have a great weekend.
Happy New Year, by the way. Or is it too late?
It's too late.
Are you one of those
yeah,
you're a Seinfeld guy? Okay.
Yeah, too late. Okay, do I wait until the end of January?
If I haven't seen you, I might open up with that. I think that's a fair way of handling it.
You could have texted me.
That's a good point. You could have texted me.
Yeah, but I wouldn't say Happy New Year.
I was saying you could have on New Year's Day said, "Hey Brady, Happy New Year."
I only respond when people do it to me. I don't do it. I don't say Happy New Year.
Oh, you're one of those guys. Okay. I'll keep that in mind. I'll keep that in mind.
I did say Happy New Year to Lane Kiffin, though.
See, but maybe that's because Lane's pretty good at luring people into situations like Damon Williams and all that. Maybe who knows?
I didn't reach out to Lane, but hey, have a great weekend. Thank you, bud.
Thank you.
That's Brady Quinn. Yeah, I'm not a Happy New Year. I got my hair cut yesterday. I walked in and a woman cuts my hair and she goes, "Happy New Year." Oh, that's right. I remember last year that I can't say Happy New Year. I go, "No, you can. I just not a hey Happy New Year." We're a week after the fact. Yeah, Paul.
But the debate and the conversation you're having with these people is longer than just accepting the Happy New Year. And I agree with you.
I know.
Philosophically.
Yeah. Yes.
Not only are we a week after the fact of New Year's, but we're a solid 18 years into having this conversation every first week of the year, and you still haven't found a way to just let it roll off your back.
No. I'm even more emboldened.
If people say it to you, then you say it back. If they don't say it, then don't say it. And then
you can even
life is going to be be a lot less stressful for you.
I'm sorry, Seton. I got a big night.
When can we start saying it? When can we stop saying it? Whenever you want.
I see a dog psychic tonight.
If Brady Quinn wants to say Happy New Year, say it.
I know.
If you don't want to say it, then don't say it.
I know.
And you just move on with your day.
I just can't. There's certain things.